In a 6-hour window last night, Israel eliminated the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, in a strike in Tehran, as well as the top Hezbollah military commander, Fuad Shuker, in a strike in Beirut. Both were killed in places that they believed they were safe. And now we wait to see if this lowers the temperature at all or ramps things up to a whole new level. Now, as you might expect, what we're going to do today is run through what we know so far about each one of these attacks, what the Hezbollah strike that prompted this new wave of escalation, and what this could mean for Israel and the broader region going forward. Now, starting with the most notable event, really since the October 7th attacks took place, the death of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, who was killed by an alleged Israeli airstrike in Tehran overnight. As of this recording, Israel has not confirmed that they carried out this strike. They've done this multiple times over the years, and it's pretty well known that they have assets inside of Iran able to facilitate attacks like this. But for the sake of transparency, Israel has not yet claimed responsibility. They say the strike came just after Haniyeh had attended the inauguration of Iran's new president and only hours after Israel targeted a top Hezbollah commander in Beirut. An Iranian source put out that the assassination was carried out by means of a missile launched outside of the territory of Iran. The launch was not carried out from inside of Iranian territory. A little bit of mixed information on that one right now. It sounds like it could have come from a variety of means. There is speculation that F-35 stealth fighters may have been used to carry out this strike. But what we do know is that Haniyeh was in Iran for the inauguration of the new president, had just met with the president earlier that day, and was staying in a guest house that appears to have been the former residence of an IRGC official, so the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And in that building was also the leader of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, another militant group operating in Gaza. It sounds like the strike took place at about 2 a.m. And a couple key notes when looking at this event. That means that, again, Israel has significant intelligence assets either on the ground or overhead in Iran to be able to identify where Haniyeh is staying and verify that he's in that location before they carry out this strike. This is not like Gaza, where Israel might try a couple different times to kill a senior leader. This is a very deliberate, targeted, one-time strike inside of Iran, clearly designed to kill Haniyeh, as appears to have been the case. Now, this is not a case of speculation that Haniyeh was killed. Really, across a variety of channels, we're getting confirmation. The Iranian supreme leader said, quote, we consider his revenge as our duty, saying that Israel had prepared a harsh punishment for itself by killing a dear guest in our home. The Iranian president added to that, saying that Iran will defend the integrity of its lands and honor and make the invaders regret their cowardly actions. The relations between the Iranian people and the Palestinian people will be stronger than ever. Hamas issued a statement saying the criminal assassination of Commander Haniyeh in the heart of the Iranian capital is a significant and dangerous event that takes the battle to new dimensions and will have major repercussions in the entire region. It is time for this Zionist orgy to stop, for this raging enemy to be reined in, and for the hand that fiddles here and there to be deterred from its aggression to be cut off. And again, statements across the board. We've got stuff from Hezbollah, Islamic Resistance in Iraq, the Houthis. Everybody is kind of chiming in. World leaders are chiming in, talking about this event taking place and the death of Haniyeh. So at this point, I'd say it's pretty well verified that the leader of Hamas was killed overnight in Iran. Now, the U.S. did put out a brief statement on this, coming from the U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, to the Washington Post, said, quote, the United States did not receive an early warning before the elimination of Haniyeh and has nothing to do with the incident. There's also some speculation there, which is understandable, that this may have been discussed during Netanyahu's visit to the United States just last week. This is a major event that risks a broader escalation that could very well pull the United States into the conflict. So the idea that Israel would carry out something this significant inside of Iranian territory without any coordination or notice of the United States does seem a little off, but you never know. Tensions have been rife between the United States and Israel recently. It's entirely possible they kept this under wraps under concerns that the United States might say no or try to push back on this operation. So a little bit of a background for anybody not familiar with Ismail Haniyeh. Really, he is the political and diplomatic front of Hamas. So Haniyeh took over Hamas in 2017 and has really been kind of the most visible leader, if you will. especially during Israel's war in Gaza that kicked off in October. He's really been one of the key figures in negotiating and trying to bring about the ceasefire, at least from the Hamas side. When you hear anything about ceasefire negotiations, and we'll get more into what that could mean going forward here in a moment, Haniyeh is kind of the senior figure giving the final thumbs up or thumbs down when it comes to any of those proposals. Now, the fact that Haniyeh left Gaza a while ago means that he's able to, at his own discretion, or at risk, travel across the region. And he's been in Turkey, Qatar, obviously Iran now at this point, and he's been able to use that mobility as a way to kind of facilitate aid and support for his group and talk with, of course, Hamas's chief ally, Iran. Now, he is the most senior figure of Hamas killed since October 7th, but it was just a couple weeks ago that Israel carried out a strike in Gaza where they said they killed the leader of the Hamas Qassam brigades. That's the militant arm of Hamas in Gaza, Mohammed Deif. Now, as of this recording, Hamas has still not claimed that Deif was killed. We've not seen, very different, right? As soon as Haniyeh was killed, moments after the strike, we saw eruptions across Hamas and Hamas-affiliated media mourning his death and announcing his death. We haven't seen that for Deif, but that also tracks with how Hamas is not really announcing any deaths inside of Gaza since this war began. For what it's worth, Israel has said recently that they are confident that Deif was killed. Again, no confirmation on the ground. So that means that Deif, really the number 2 man in Gaza behind Yahya Sinwar, who's the overall Hamas leader in the Gaza Strip, you had the number 2 of Hamas in Gaza killed just a couple weeks ago, the leader of the militant arm of the organization. And then fast forward to today, it looks like the top overall officer in Hamas, and Ismail Haniyeh, was killed. Now, that in of itself is a significant event, but we have to take into consideration another strike that Israel carried out last night in Beirut, Lebanon, against a senior Hezbollah official. The reason for that is you're talking about all these different allies of the self-proclaimed axis of resistance, and that's going to play into what this could mean going forward and what Israel and really the world should expect in the coming days or weeks. So yesterday, before news of Haniyeh's death came out, Israel said that they conducted a strike in Beirut targeting Fuad Shuker, the most senior Hezbollah military commander. He's kind of the top dog when it comes to Hezbollah's military. And Hezbollah, again, is this militant organization that really runs southern Lebanon and does have a lot of influence across the entire country of Lebanon. It is different than the state of Lebanon. It's kind of a semi-state actor, if you will, and they have a significant military presence in the southern portion of the country and would pose a very real threat to Israel in the event of an all-out war. Now, since October 7th, Israel says that Shuker has been managing Hezbollah's attacks against Israel, including the deadly strike in Majd al-Shams over the weekend, killing 12 children. That's something we'll get into here in a moment as well. The IDF says that he was responsible for the majority of Hezbollah's most advanced weaponry, including precision-guided missiles, cruise missiles, anti-ship missiles, long-range rockets, and UAVs, and the terror group's force buildup, planning, and execution of terror attacks against the state of Israel. I should note that the United States had a $5 million reward listed for any information that led to his capture or death, and the U.S. alleges that he did play a central role in the 1983 bombing of the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut, which killed 241 U.S. military personnel. So Shuker, in this case, is not just a thorn in the side of Israel. This is a man who has American blood in his hands dating back to 1983. Now, Hezbollah put out a statement around this. We do not have confirmation at this point that Shuker was killed. This is one where you're seeing kind of mixed reactions across a variety of channels. The only thing that Hezbollah has put out at this point is they said, quote, significant damage was caused to the building that was attacked. The senior commander, brother Fuad Shuker, was in the building at the time of the attack. Civil defense teams are working to clear the rubble. We are awaiting news regarding Fuad Shuker's fate. So it's interesting, right? You're talking about a very senior figure inside of Hezbollah, and their statement is, we're waiting to hear more. Now, I should note that Hezbollah, very similar to what we just saw with Ismail Haniyeh, they do put out statements when their senior leaders are killed. When it's a low-level fighter, it tends to be 6, 12, maybe 24 hours before the news comes out. When it's a more senior figure, it might take a little bit longer, just as you would expect from any government. There has to be kind of, how are we going to message this? How are we going to put this out? What are we going to say? So it wouldn't be shocking if they did know that Shuker was killed and they're just waiting to kind of message that in the right way. But Hezbollah, unlike Hamas in Gaza, does not really hide the death of their military personnel. They celebrate it. So they put this information out there in the public. So if Shuker was in fact killed, I would expect Hezbollah to come out sometime in the near future and confirm that. And worth noting here that Israel says that he was killed in this attack. Now, what led up to this was a Hezbollah strike on July 27th, so just this past Saturday, in Majd al-Shams. And I'm going to pull up a map here to give you an idea of the area we're talking about, because we've got a lot of different regions, a lot of different places, and this is the type of news where a lot of people are going to be tuning in to understand what's going on and maybe aren't super familiar with, this region. So if we're zoomed out here, this is a resource called Live UA Map. It's publicly available. We're going to zoom into Israel here in the middle of the screen. So we've got Lebanon to the north, with Hezbollah controlling a significant portion of the southern part of the country, and most of the attacks between Israel and Hezbollah have been taking place along this border separating the two countries, understandably so. Majd al-Shams is up here in the very northeast portion in the Golan Heights. We'll zoom in a little bit further. Here we go. Majd al-Shams right here in the middle of the screen. So this gets confusing, and admittedly, I'm no expert in the demographics of the region. I'm not going to try to be. But Majd al-Shams is a predominantly Druze town in the Golan Heights. So the Druze maintain Arabic language and culture as integral parts of their identity, and Arabic is their primary language. So it's an important aspect when looking at all this. This attack against Majd al-Shams was the deadliest since the fighting began really picked up between Hezbollah and Israel back in October. And this specific attack carried out on the 27th, as of now, appears to have killed at least 12 people, mostly children and teens. Now, Hezbollah did put out a response following this strike. Israel immediately accused Hezbollah of conducting this attack, and you can see, again, on the map, it's right up against Lebanese territory, and we've seen a multitude of Hezbollah attacks right across the border into the Golan Heights as well, but also into Israeli territory here a little further to the southwest. Now, Hezbollah put out a statement saying the Islamic resistance in Lebanon categorically denies the allegations reported by some enemy media outlets and various media platforms regarding the targeting of Majd al-Shams, and confirms that the Islamic resistance has no connection to the incident at all, and categorically denies all false allegations to this regard. Now, the reason this is important and how we're going from these key leaders being killed all of a sudden to a relatively small town in the Golan Heights is because following this attack, Israel said that a red line had been crossed, and that they were going to respond in kind of a new way, suggesting senior Hezbollah leadership could be in the crosshairs, and that might have to do also with why Haniyeh was targeted. Now, Hezbollah, when looking at these claims, there's a lot of speculation going around that it was not actually a Hezbollah rocket. Look, it was. All indications point to Hezbollah launching this attack on Majd al-Shams. So, again, pulling the map back up here for reference. For starters, they claimed responsibility for an attack on an Israeli base in the region earlier that day, an Israeli base up in this area here. Hezbollah claimed responsibility for that attack. And then once the information came out that it was a bunch of children killed at Majd al-Shams on a Saturday, they walked it back and said, actually, we didn't carry out that strike, deleted that post. So they claimed responsibility for an attack in the area, and then after the effects of that strike became known, then they said, no, actually, we didn't, right? They don't traditionally do that. Across their media, they're constantly claiming responsibility for attacks that are pretty accurate, all things considered. Unlike what we see from Hamas, when Hezbollah says they carried out an attack, it tends to have happened. The second major piece of evidence here, and there's a lot, it's one of those things where like everything points to a Hezbollah rocket. The fragments recovered on scene were from a Farak 1 rocket, which is an Iranian-made Hezbollah-used munition, and it causes a large explosion, 50-kilogram warhead, I believe, on or about, and we did see some footage of the detonation on site. It seems to match that. So, again, all indications are a Hezbollah rocket in this area, and I think one of the things that really got people hung up on this is why now? Why at this point in the war was the deadliest attack carried out by Hezbollah? How could that have happened? And I think we have to recognize that really that's more a testament to how effective Israeli air defense has been up to this point. Hezbollah has launched thousands of munitions into Israeli territory since October, and the vast majority of those have been shot down. A lot of them have caused massive fires across northern Israel. A handful of others have impacted Israeli military bases in the north and some civilian infrastrucstructure. The fact that 12 killed is the deadliest day since October in the north based off of Hezbollah attacks is not, it is directly due to the fact that Israeli air defense has been pretty effective up to this point. But air defenses have shortcomings. They have limitations, and they make mistakes, and it appears in this case that rocket should have been intercepted, could have been intercepted, and it was not. Now, right away, the Israeli Arabic spokesperson put out the name of the individual they said was responsible here. They said Ali Mohammed Yahya, who was the commander of the rocket launching site in southern Lebanon. And shortly thereafter, we got news that Israel had conducted a strike, apparently targeting Yahya. Haven't seen anything from Hezbollah as to whether or not he was actually killed. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that because that is apparently what led up to the strike in Lebanon and possibly even this strike in Tehran, essentially red line being crossed for Israel. So moving into what comes next, what can we expect from this point forward? Again, it's a very uncertain time in this overall conflict. For starters, I would expect that the ceasefire negotiations stall out at least for a little while. Even if this does push Hamas to the table, showing up now would be kind of negotiating from a very obvious point of weakness, and there's no reason they're going to want to give Israel that upper hand. Now, there has been a pretty significant political military divide in Hamas that's pretty well split between the local commanders in Gaza who want to continue fighting the war, have a little more hardline demands when it comes to any sort of ceasefire, and then those abroad in Haniyeh's camp that are maybe looking at this from a more practical point of view, thinking of a way to end the war while still maintaining some degree of power. It's possible that Haniyeh's death, being targeted, the first Hamas senior figure outside of Gaza killed since this war began, may prompt some of those external Hamas leaders to push for an actual ceasefire, recognizing that they could be next, that they are actually in harm's way. It's possible that this does drive that divide even further. But either way, whether that is the case or whether it hardens Hamas's resolve and this fight is further from being over, I wouldn't expect any immediate change on the ceasefire negotiations. Now, something that Israel has to think about at this point is a simultaneous attack from Hezbollah, as well as Iran and maybe even some of Iran's proxies. We're going to get into some of that here in a minute. Hamas isn't really on that list. They're going to talk a big game about doing something to avenge Haniyeh, but look, realistically, that's an organization that's been degraded militarily by quite a bit. They're not really in a place to carry out any sort of spectacular or significant attack against Israel. Maybe you'll see something, a couple of rockets fired by Hamas or something like that. But Hamas, again, they're kind of on their back foot right now in multiple portions of Gaza. They're fighting for their life. It's hard to think that at this point, Hamas is going to do something to significantly impact Israel without putting themselves at risk of being even further degraded. Now, it does kind of look like, when viewing this thing from the outside, that Israel is trying to kind of escalate to de-escalate, which I know sounds like a silly term. It's something we use here in the United States as well, and kind of showing that they're able to go after senior leaders quite a ways outside of Israel and doing so at the same time. Simultaneous attacks against Iran and Hezbollah, not against Iran, but inside of Iran and inside of Lebanon, Hezbollah inside of Lebanon, shows that they might be able to fight two fronts at the same time. This is actually worth pulling up the map again here to show you just how far away some of these attacks were carried out. So for reference, we've got the Gaza Strip here in the southwestern portion of Israel. Beirut, not all that far, right from northern Israel. Israel has carried out attacks there before. So we've got 57 miles, 92 kilometers on our bout. But when we move over to Tehran, this is all of a sudden a very, very significant strike, being able to move, what do we have here? 1,500 kilometers, moving through someone's airspace. Not entirely clear at this point whether it was the most likely, and what we've seen in the past when Israel has carried out strikes in Iran is, as you can see on this map, moving through Syria, moving through Iraq, striking inside of Iran, and then moving back. But either way, that's a significant operation, more so than even the strike on the Houthis in the south, where they're able to stay mostly over international waters throughout the entire time. Now, in looking at what to expect from kind of in response here, what I want to look at is Iran and Hezbollah, and we're going to walk through the most likely course of action and then the most dangerous course of action. Again, anybody who's been on this channel for a while, that's what we try to do. It's a military means of planning. When we look at enemy actions, we look at, based off of their capabilities, what are they most likely to do? And then based off of their capabilities, what is the most dangerous course of action they could carry out that could impact the friendly forces? So in this case, we're viewing this from the Israeli perspective. What is the most likely and most dangerous course of action for Iran and Hezbollah? Starting with Iran, looking at their most likely course of action, I would expect something similar to what we saw a couple months ago, where they launched a handful, quite a few, 200 or more, maybe even 300 drones, rockets, and missiles at Israel. that type of response would show that they took this violation of their sovereignty seriously, which is going to be important as this new president, it was his inauguration where Haniyeh was successfully targeted. And remember, he's going to have a lot of hardliners inside of Iran wanting to do a lot more, to say this is unacceptable. They're striking inside of Iran. They're killing one of, the head of one of our allies at a presidential inauguration. He's going to have a lot of hardliners wanting to do more, and a drone and missile attack might be something that he can at least call on to conduct pretty quickly and kind of push those hardliners back just a little bit. Now, the most dangerous course of action, and this one's worth pulling the map back up here, is a coordinated, simultaneous attack between multiple groups of the axis of resistance against Israel. Israel has not seen this yet. Each one of these groups, be it the Islamic resistance in Iraq, the Houthis down in Yemen, Hezbollah up north in Lebanon, you've got the variety, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and then Iran. They're all kind of doing their own thing. The IRGC, right? They're all kind of doing their own thing at their own times. It really hasn't been all that coordinated. If they were to do that, if each group, if Hezbollah attacks from the north, the Islamic resistance in Iraq strikes, they've got groups here in Syria as well as in Iraq. So you got Lebanon, Hezbollah coming in from the north, more attacks coming in from the east, and then the Houthis coming in from down here in the south in Yemen, who have shown the ability to strike inside of Israel. I wouldn't count on it time and time again, but they could at the very least fire off a couple drones and missiles to get Israel's attention to the south, and then Iran launching a larger barrage into Israel. That is something that would be too much for Israel's air defenses to handle. They just don't have the capability of defeating a significant missile or rocket barrage really coming from 3 or 4 different directions in quantity. Right? If you're talking about 300 or so munitions coming from Iran, another 300-400 coming from Hezbollah, that by itself is going to overwhelm the air defense systems, and some of them are going to get through. That's going to cause, likely a significant damage somewhere in Israel and possibly a large loss of life. So that is the most dangerous course of action following this strike in Tehran and Beirut, is if the axis of resistance gets together, and they've already shown the ability to coordinate. We just haven't really seen it play out. If they get together and launch simultaneous attacks, it would overwhelm the Israeli air defense and cause probably quite a few deaths inside of Israel. Now, turning to Hezbollah, looking at the most likely scenario here, this is one we have to treat with a little bit of caution, just because this is uncharted territory in a lot of ways. So given that it was a top Hezbollah military commander, we have to think the response is going to be something to show that the group still has the ability to carry out military actions. It's probably going to be more than anything we've seen from Hezbollah in the past, if they choose to respond. We've seen kind of tit for tat when senior leaders have been killed there. More notable Hezbollah commanders tends to follow a 60 or 70 rocket barrage, certain military sites in the north targeted, things like that. What I keep an eye out for here is something a level beyond that. Again, this is the most senior Hezbollah official killed since the war began, and it is the top of their military, the ones carrying out these actions against Israel. This might be a time, most of the attacks we've seen so far have been in the border regions here, the northern portion of Israel. This might be, I thought I had the map up there. Most of the attacks have been here in the northern portion of Israel. This might be the time where Hezbollah does have much longer range capabilities to reach really anywhere inside of Israel. This might be the time where they decide they're going to strike somewhere a little further south, maybe Tel Aviv, maybe Haifa, maybe Jerusalem, who knows? Just Hezbollah has those capabilities. They haven't really showcased them yet in this war. This might be the opportunity where they decide to show what they actually have at their disposal. But either way, you have to expect some sort of response from Hezbollah, given the nature of this strike. The most dangerous course of action when looking at Hezbollah, we have to group them together with the same one as Iran. The entire axis of resistance comes together for a coordinated attack against Israel. Of course, Hezbollah would play a major role if that were to take place. So, again, we wait. There's always time for de-escalation. There's always time for de-escalation to occur, always time for more talks, always time to find peace. But we're in a window right now of a lot of uncertainty about how these groups are going to respond to the Israeli strike, and uncertainty about how Israel will receive those responses and what will come next. So, be safe out there. That's all I got for now. course, if interested in this or other national security subjects, be sure to check out our reader-funded publication called Between the Lines, linked in the description below. We've got a lot of background information there on Hezbollah, the Iranian proxy strategy, the Iranian weapons industry, things that really are going to be relevant when trying to understand how this whole situation plays out. Again, linked in the description below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.